Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is fine. This YouTube is for poetry. I said that I would start a poetry section, and that's what I'm doing. There's a reason why I'm doing that is because I think poetry is very important in life. It's just something that we learn in school, or we hear some um, some poems sometimes when somebody um, recites them, but we really don't give it as much attention as it should get. Um, so that's why I made this poetry section. I mean, this poetry, this poetry section inside my channel. I think it's very important. And I think that everyone should know at least one poem that they can recite to, like, um, you ever been at a party or out to dinner and then somebody recites a poem or a monologue or something and you're at all, everybody's just like, wow, you know what I mean? And the thing about it is that person probably took a lot of time to recite that poem. What I'm going to do in this section is that I'm going to recite a poem that I've worked on, but I've worked on for a long, long time, and I'm not going to do it unless I know that it's going to be done in a very good, in a very good way. I mean, I can't say good way, in a very sophisticated. Um, how can I say? I guess I can't say it's not so much sophisticated, but I want to get into the poem. I want to study it so much so when I do the YouTube on the poem that I recite, I want to recite it as if I'm the character or if I'm the narrator. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do in this section of the poetry section in my channel. Um, I had a poem. I have a poem that I'm going to recite for this first one. I did it before as an example. It's on one of the other YouTubes, but I did it real quick. And just as an experiment. In the poem that I have, I want to explain about what I feel about this poem. When I was in, it's like maybe, it must have been like or six, must have been sixth grade, fifth or sixth grade. Everybody had to recite a poem. Everybody had to do a poem. I'm almost sure it was like in the whole school because you were supposed to. I don't know why, but it was It was in Buffalo, New York. But I'm sure everybody had to do a poem because my sister was in like maybe seventh grade. Yeah, she was in seventh grade, so I must have been in sixth grade. And she also had to do the poem. But everybody had in the school, I mean, maybe starting from sixth grade or whatever, had to do this poem. And mine was Flanders Field, and my sister's was Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening. I think that's the name of it, by Robert Frost. My mother saw the poem, and she saw my sister's poem when we got home. And she didn't offer any techniques or anything, but my sister said her poem so many times. I mean, so many times. If somebody came over, she would say, "Whose what these are? I think I know," and she would do the whole poem. I mean, all day long I would hear this poem, and I couldn't even go through my Flanders Field. I didn't know how to do it anyway. I didn't know how to say things over and over again. I didn't know how to prepare myself for a poem or anything. So I remember when we were in an auditorium rehearsing. So it must have been like a whole school thing or whatever. And it was just our class's time to do this poem. And she said, like I said, I always use, even though I changed my name, I use my name now. I don't use my former name. So she said, "Pierre, it's your turn. Go up and do the poem." And I remember going up to the stage, and it was just our rehearsal time. And she says, okay, so her name was Slater. Yes, her name was Slater. So my sister was in 8th grade and I was in 7th grade. So it must have just been for the 7th and 8th grades because the school went from kindergarten to 8th grade. So I was in 7th, my sister was in 8th, I guess. But anyway, that's beside the point. So anyway, because Slater, I had Slater and she was definitely a 7th grade teacher. So anyway, beside the point. Um, I couldn't say anything. I was up on the stage and she said, go on, Pierre. And I was just like, go on, Pierre. Pierre, do your poem. And I couldn't. And she said, okay, come on down. So I went down. But as time goes on, I never realized that I memorized my sister's poem. I don't know. I didn't memorize it. I just heard my sister say it all the time, and I remember that maybe 3 years later or 4 years later. This is really strange. I would go, "Whose woods these are? I think I know his house is in the village, though." And I would say that poem throughout my whole life, and I didn't even realize that I remembered a poem that my sister had and couldn't remember mine because she said it so much I remembered the poem. But I didn't even know I knew it until maybe like 3 or 4 years later, to where I would always go, "What these are? I think I know." And I did that throughout my life. And it really helped me in a lot of times. I mean, I would say it sometimes. I would say it, and people go, "Wow, you know that," or something like that. But it was very relaxing just to know a poem. So everybody learn a poem, and I mean, it takes a long time. Take your time with it. Don't try and do it in one evening. Maybe take a month or 2 months to make sure you have it down. So I'm going to give the poem that I remember from my sister. That's the one I'm going to start with. It's going to be Robert Frost, Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening. Whose woods these are? I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to see his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it's queer to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bell a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy winds and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep. Miles to go before I sleep. So that's the first one, okay? But now I didn't just give it to you. I didn't just tell you that poem. I went over it and over. Even though I would say it all the time, there were some things that were missing. So I was practicing that poem maybe for like a month before I did it here. So this is going to be our little poetry section. I hope everybody enjoys it. And remember, get to learn one poem. Take a long time with it, and it'll help you out with a lot of things you don't realize. Just a lot of benefits in knowing at least one. My next one is going to be a poem, another one by Robert Frost. I'm almost sure it's going to be Out. It's about a little kid who loses. It's just really terrible. The only reason why I like it because it's like, it was just a sad thing about, he's working in a saw or something. Maybe a lot of people know. And he makes a mistake and the saw cuts his hand. He ends up dying and everybody just goes back to work. It's like, he's dead, let's go back to work. And I was thinking about it's just so terrible. It makes me think about how important everybody is. And when somebody passes that's of importance, I don't care who it is, we need to stop and think about that person. I guess that's the next one I'm going to do. But anyway, I hope you enjoy this section. I hope you enjoy everything else. in my channel, and take care and have a good time.